Story structure. It is a thing. And today I'm going to briefly cover it, but mostly talk to you about the very first turning point in your story, which is so important. And it's called the first plot point. Welcome to week 4 of Write Your Book in 90 Days. This week, we're talking about the first plot point in 3-act structure. Yes, story structure is a real thing for fiction writers. And I'll just let you know up front that I'm not one of those person who is like hard and fast. This has to happen at 25%, and this happens at 50, and this happens at 75. I am definitely the person who says, you need to know it, and you need to make sure all these things are present at approximately the right time. But as long as you have the pacing and the tension to keep readers reading, then readers will keep reading. Imagine that. So the first plot point in your story is what I call the point of no return. And I've seen it referred to as a doorway, but it's the first turning point in your story when your hero has to make a decision, and they do. They make this decision and decide they're going to upend their normal world to pursue solving the story problem, whatever it is. Now, the pros will tell you that this happens at 20 to 25% through your story. So by the one fourth of the way through, you are at this doorway and your protagonist has stepped through it. Now, it does depend on genre, and it does depend on when you had your inciting incident happen, which we talked about here in the intensive last week a little bit. So the inciting incident is that thing that throws your hero into a tailspin and shows them that there is a problem and makes them have to then question, how are they going to address it? What are they going to address it? Their normal world will not be the same, regardless of what they decide. So their normal world has been disrupted, major earthquake, and so they have to make some sort of decision. And that's what this is, the decision that they make. That's the first plot point. And it is the doorway into Act 2. Now, I'm going to refer to 2 structure books that I highly, highly, highly recommend to all the writers that I work with. And the first is Plot and Structure by James Scott Bell. Now, he calls the first plot point the first doorway of no return, implying, of course, there is a second and maybe even a third, because a lot of story experts will tell you that the midpoint is also a doorway of no return, because there is a turning point there as well as at the 75 point. So this definition is on page 70 of this book. So I want to give full credit to, so I call it the point of no return. He calls it the doorway of no return. So we kind of have split the difference on that. James Scott Bell's book, Plot and Structure, is what I considered my Bible for revising my book. And I don't follow his methods exactly, but I highly recommend it because he has exercises that will help you figure out. He addresses every major thing that you need for your plot and your character arc and tension and all the things. And he also gives you a variety of different planning models that can be used if you're not a traditional outliner or you're more of a right by the seat of your pantser. So I definitely highly recommend this book, and I feel like every fiction author should have it in their arsenal. Okay, so again, want to just review this basic story structure since we're talking about this first plot point. Now you see they have divided, the pros have divided the 3 acts into pretty much equal parts. Some books may call this a 4-act structure, and it's the same structure. What they're saying is that Act 2 ends at the midpoint, Act 3 begins there, and then Act 4 begins at plot point 2, okay? And we will be addressing midpoint and plot point 2, the climax, all the rest of the things throughout in our next 2 months together here in the intensive. But this plot point 1 is essential to keep your reader engaged and moving forward. Something needs to happen to keep them turning pages. Your hero needs to make a decision. Now, a lot of first-time novelists spend way too much time on backstory and building the story world and all that stuff so that their first beat would come more like the 40%. This first turning point would come back at the 40% mark. No, no, no. You'll have to go back and cut that out, because while I may have said that I'm not firm on this has to happen at exactly this point, I will say that it really shouldn't happen much past 27, 28% of your book, or you're going to lose the impetus that a reader will feel to continue reading your story, because it's just not going to be compelling enough to move them forward. They want your hero to make a decision about the story problem, because that is exactly what happens at plot point 1. So now, to help you with this, in case you're still kind of going, Sharon, I don't wait back. Sorry. This is what happens when you have a lot of screens. All right. To help you understand what I'm talking about with this first plot point, before I go on and talk to you about Larry Brooks's book, I want to share a few examples from movies and books. Okay. So first of all, Grease. Now I'm dating myself. I'm talking about the movie starring Olivia Newton-John, the late Olivia Newton-John, and John Travolta. Okay. So if you're not familiar with this movie, it is a musical, and it is all about the romance between Danny and Sandy. Okay. They have met this summer before their senior year, I think, and they've had this great romance, and they have no clue that they're going to be attending the same high school, because Sandy's new to the area. And so it just doesn't come up. And so when school starts, and the leader of the Pink Ladies, so remember, there's a couple different gangs here, Danny's gang and then the Pink Ladies, that is led by Rizzo. Rizzo sees that, oh, Sandy and Danny were together, and Rizzo has had this secret crush on Danny. So she is going to fix this. All right, because she knows Danny pretty well. So the first plot point is when Rizzo forces the meeting between Sandy and Danny in front of the greasers, in front of Danny's greasers' friends. So of course, Danny has to act cool and pretend like he doesn't really care that much about Sandy. And of course, Sandy's hurt. Okay, so what is the point of no return? Well, now Danny's going to spend the rest of the story coming to terms with the fact that he either wants Sandy or he doesn't, and pursuing her. Okay, so that they can eventually get together at the end, because it's a romance. So of course, that is what happens at the end of romances. Okay, another one of my favorite movies, because it features my favorite superhero, which is Wonder Woman. And so this is the original Wonder Woman movie, not the newest one, 1984. So remember, this story is about Diana Prince, right? She is the heir to the Amazons, right? And she's grown up on the island, and she wants to do more. She wants to be part of it, but her mom keeps shielding her, right? Well, then the spy plane crashes, right? And she dives in and saves Steve Treasure. That's the inciting incident, okay? That's the thing that shakes up her normal world. But the first plot point, hey, you can probably guess it if you've seen this movie. A doorway of no return. She leaves behind her normal world. Yes, it's the moment she and Steve set sail on the boat to head to London, so that she can face down Ares and make sure that the war to end all wars does not happen. Okay. And what I love about this is that it's so clear. No turning back. Her mom even tells her, if you leave, you're not going to be able to return. Perfect. And so strong, such an obvious first plot point, the point of no return. She leaves the normal world on a ship, and mom says you can't come back. That's right, because the first plot point of no return in the story. Okay, and for my third example, I want to mention one of my favorite classics, To Kill a Mockingbird. Okay, so now this story is about at Scout. It's Scout's coming of age story too. She's the girl, the young girl, but it's also the story of her dad, Atticus Finch, who of course most of us, admire greatly because he's her hero. He's a single parent, and so he's her hero. So the inciting incident is kind of interesting because it's about a Boo Radley, the neighbor. So it doesn't have as much to do with the overall story arc, but it does shake things up for Scout since it's Scout's story. But the first plot point is when the kids learn, okay, that Atticus has agreed to defend Tom Robinson, the black man in this rape trial that is shaking up their whole community and is the central point, the central message of this book, To Kill a Mockingbird, is around that incident. And it's so well told by checking it out from Scout, an innocent girl's perspective. So, because she does carry the biases, and it's amazing. If you haven't read it, which of course you have, but if you haven't, I highly recommend that you read it. And that's the first plot point, is that the children learn that dad's taken this case and the people in town aren't happy with him. What? Everyone loves Atticus Finch, is everyone's golden boy until now. And so the kids are plunged into now this whole racial prejudice issue that is going on in their town, that is the central theme of the book, To Kill a Mockingbird. So if these have helped you at all, I want you to know that you can find a database 47 pages long. I don't know how many movies and books are written there on helping writers become authors website. And it is K.M. Weiland's website, and she is amazing at story structure. So I highly recommend this is a place for you to get more familiar with all the plot points if you aren't familiar with the basic story structure. And that link will be linked in the comments on this video. Now, Story Engineering by Larry Brooks, another great manual for understanding story structure. Now, Brooks is a little bit more literal and a little bit more expansive because it's called engineering, right? So it kind of uses a different part of your brain. And the thing is that planning a story does kind of use a different part of your brain than the actual writing it and the ideas that flow with it. But story engineering is fantastic because it really gets down to lots of nuts and bolts for you to explain how structure works and why it works, and to give you a lot of hints and tips about how to make it work for your story, whatever it is. And he also gives lots of examples from works and, to let you see what he's talking about. So highly recommend this as well. And Larry has an amazingly long, I was going to read it, 6-line sentence where he literally defines the first plot point. But the most important part of that is that the hero is forced to take action. So that is the first plot point. And I hope today's video has helped you understand better how essential this point is in your story.